Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF World Champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 244 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined this week by the former heavyweight world title challenger, the man himself, Mr. Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Very good, very good. Same as it has been recently. Not too much boxing to discuss. There is a little bit to review and preview though, of course, because boxing has been back on our screens. It's been predominantly at The Bubble, this mythical place in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm going to start here with the review part. I'm going to get straight into it here. This card took place last Thursday, so that's Thursday the 11th of June. We're in June now. It seems like every month seems to just be flying by. But anyway, this one last week, Jesse Magdaleno topped the bill, of course, 28-1 now. His opponent, Yenifel Vicente, it was a fight I was looking forward to on paper, to be honest. But anyway, his opponent, Yenifel Vicente, got disqualified in the 10th and final round. His record now 36-5 with 2 draws. Vicente was down in the first round and the 5th round, and he had 3 points deducted in round 4, which is bizarre. And then he had 1 point deducted in, I think it was round 10. And every single point deduction was from low blows. So it was a real shame. He just couldn't stop hitting Jesse Magdaleno low. That was that fight there. On the undercard, we saw Adam Lopez 13-2 move to 14-2, a majority decision win over 10 rounds against Luis Correa, who's now 12-3. That one was for the vacant NABF featherweight title. There was also a draw on the bill between 2 undefeated prospects. Eric Mondragon, 3-0 going in. Mike Sanchez was his opponent, 6-0. Adelaide Bird was one of the judges. She had it a draw, no surprise. It was a good fight though, because both men were down in the first round. You know how tricky a 4-rounder can be. 2 undefeated prospects, one guy goes down first. Straight away you're thinking, oh boy, he's got a mountain to climb now. It's a 4-rounder, he's lost this round 10-8. But the guy, credit to him, got back up and then dropped his opponent. So like I say, both men down in the first round. That was quite eventful. And there was also a fight card that took place on the weekend at the Havel Studios in Berlin, Germany. Jack Kulkai topped the bill. It was for his WBO International Super Welterweight title. He's now 28-4, a unanimous decision for him over 12 rounds against Howard Kospoliti, who's now 18-8 with 3 draws. And of course, let's not miss the bill that took place, the heavyweight pay-per-view that took place at the Connery in Poland, topping the bill over here for the vacant Republic of Poland International Heavyweight title. Mariusz Wach, now 36-6, a unanimous decision for him over 10 rounds against the American veteran, I guess you can call him, Kevin Kingpin Johnson. Now 34 wins, 17 losses and a draw. I don't know about you, Eddie, but Kevin Johnson somehow being made eligible to fight for the vacant Republic of Poland international heavyweight title doesn't sit too right with me. I don't look at Kevin Johnson and think he just looks like a typical Polish man. That's just me though. I don't know about you.
I'm with you on it, trust me.
Kevin Kingpin Johnson. It's a shame he's got 17 losses, to be honest, because he's so much better than I think his record suggests. But anyway, that's that. We should also mention the result from this week. It took place on the 16th of of June. This Tuesday just gone, of course. It's getting a little bit confusing now with Top Rank doing shows on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, but this one took place just a couple days ago. On the undercard, we saw Antonio DeMarco actually lose a majority decision over 10 rounds to Giovanni Santillan, who's 25-0. He's now 26-0. I think Santillan has been looked after quite a bit, to be honest, to get himself as far as 26-0. I think he's been managed very carefully, and a lot of people felt like Antonio DeMarco deserved the win, but some people calling that a robbery. It was very close. And of course, topping the bill, Joshua Greer Jr., a top-ranked prospect, a guy that's been on this show before. Nice guy, Joshua Greer Jr. They call him, I think, Mr. Night, something like that. He always brings a pillow to the weigh-in to signal that his opponent's going to go to sleep at some point. 22-1 with a draw going in against relatively unknown Mike Plania, a Filipino fighter. 23-1. His one loss came to Juan Carlos Payano, former world champion. No shame in that. It was on points as well. And he beat Joshua Greer. A humongous upset. Joshua Greer, obviously, I think he was ranked number 1 or number 2 in the WBO rankings, well in line for a world title shot. And he's took this fight here, obviously, as a bit of a keep busy kind of fight during the pandemic, and it's bitten him in the backside, unfortunately. Not quite sure how much he got paid, but undoubtedly he'll lose his ranking there. He was down in the first round and the 6th round. And it was the same shot that he got hit with both times. It was a big left hook from the Filipino fighter, who seemed to kind of feint with a jab and then step in with a big left hook. You know what I'm saying? He'd feint kind of with the jab downstairs almost, and then, you know those ones, straight in the temple. And same shot, caught Greer out twice. Not really known as a power puncher, really, the Filipino either, but kind of exposed Greer a little bit. Greer has been down a number of times in his career now. It seems a real weakness of his chin there, but all the best to him. I'd like to see him come back. Of course, the preview part of the show, this one takes place later tonight, again at the Bubble in the MGM Grand Las Vegas. Over there, we get to see, it's quite a decent card, I guess. We get to see former world champion Jose Pedraza, 26-3, take on Mikel Lespierre, 22-1 with a draw. If I'm not mistaken, I think Lespierre is the guy that Maurice Hooker, I think, beat. I think that's where his one loss came from. Could be wrong. That's a 10-rounder there. And on the undercard, Gabriel Flores Jr., 17-0. He's in a 10-rounder against Josek Ruiz, 21-2 with 3 draws. On Saturday, we've got a decent show as well. I think it's also a Bob Arum show, but it's in Nicaragua. We've got Francisco Fonseca, 25-3 with 2 draws. We've seen him in there with the likes of Javonte Davis and Tevin Farmer, I believe. And he takes on Eusebio Osejo. It's not a great card, actually, looking at it once again there. And then, of course, next Tuesday, when they're back at the Bubble, Top Rank, we get to see a really, really good card. Probably the best card during this lockdown, to be honest. It's Tuesday, the 23rd of June. Not long to go now till it comes. There's going to be a defense of Andrew Maloney's WBA World Super Flyweight title. I think that's the first world title fight that's actually took place during this pandemic. Andrew Maloney was on the show a few weeks ago, 21-0, the Australian. He puts his belt on the line against Joshua Franco, 16-1 with 2 draws. I think the original opponent was supposed to be Oscar Negrete, who Joshua Franco's had 3 fights with. I think he won one of them or won 2 of them. He lost or drew the other one. Can't remember now. So they're very much evenly matched. And this is a very tough fight, actually, for Andrew Maloney on his American debut. So that one, honestly, I hope he wins because he's a friend of the show, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him upset there. And on the undercard, Christopher Diaz, 25-2, is in a 10-rounder against Jason Sanchez, 15-1. That's all the previewing, though. That is the reviewing, of course, as well. No real news to mention, so it's now time for Eddie's Lockdown Knockdown. But I will say, we've had a suggestion on a name change, Eddie. I told you about this, obviously, a couple days ago. But someone sent in Eddie's Chamber of Secrets, and I like that.
I like that too. I ain't gonna lie, I like that. Yeah, I like that. That's nice. That's nice. Kind of like got a little bit of the Harry Potter thing popping off in there, but it's still nice and it's creative. I like that. I do like that.
So we're sticking with the Lockdown Knockdown?
I mean, you could say Lockdown, Knockdown. You can put it all together. We could just switch the name for each show, depending on what it's about. I really don't care. But I do like the Chamber of Secrets. That is nice.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie.
Shout out to the Mauler on Twitter. Good guy. Right. Yeah, so let's get into it, Eddie. So, last week we kind of left it at around about the John Sargent fight that you had in 2004 in June. Once again, we're going to try to keep this, not too long before we bring in our sole guest on this week's show. It's going to be another in-depth interview, this time with Kermit Cintron. And it's a great interview, believe me, so stick around for that. But the story this week, yeah, we left it, like I say, last week, around this John Sargent fight. I know that there was, a time that you went down and sparred with Hasim Rahman at this kind of time. I think you sparred with him. I think you were called in for sparring on 2 occasions, quite close together, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, let's go from there. The John Sargent fight, like I say, took place in the late part of June 2004. After that came your first 10-round fight against Ron Guerrero. Just take the lead, Eddie. What are we going to talk about here?
Oh, well, we're going to go to that. We'll go past that Ron Guerrero fight. There was a few things in that fight that was interesting that I had to deal with. Obviously, camp was as usual, just working hard. But it was my first 10-round fight, so it was a lot of, now, granted, I've had 8-round fights and, previous to that. So it was like, it's only 2 more rounds. But that kind of thing is like now you're in title contention. Now you're in the championship level thinking of fighting 10 rounds. You know what I mean? So when I got in there, it was business as usual. You know what I mean? I remember getting a little tired, you know what I mean, toward the 8th and 9th round, mainly thinking just because, it's a 10-round fight. You know what I mean? You get a little nervous. You get a little worried about, going that 10-round distance. Plus, it was a tough guy. Like he wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to get him out of there. You know what I mean? He was going to stick around pretty much unless, the referee got an itchy finger. You know what I mean? And wanted to stop it a little early, but no, he wasn't going anywhere. And it was interesting. It was a good learning experience, but not really much to talk about in that regard. And then I think I fought Melvin Foster next, if I'm not mistaken.
I will just jump in and say that Ron Guerrero is still active right now.
What?
Yes, he is. He's coming off a win. He's currently the American Boxing Federation American West heavyweight champion. I've never heard of that belt before, but yeah, he's still going. He got a win back in March of this year against Lorenzo Smith. But yeah, other than that, he actually hadn't won a fight for 7 years. But he's back with a bang.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Ron Guerrero's still at it?
He's still at it.
Jeez.
At the ripe old age of 46. Still at it.
Hey, well, I guess it ain't. He was a tough one, though. He was a tough nut to crack. You know what I mean? He wasn't somebody who was going to go to sleep easy. You know what I mean? So I tried, but it just didn't happen. I outboxed him easily, but it wasn't as easy as it might have looked. And it's kind of crazy because this kind of puts me, and like I fought Melvin Foster after that. That was like I don't want to say an uneventful fight. I mean, I think I did pretty well with him, got him out of there. I wasn't 5, but going through those stages, I remember I started to gain weight, not a lot of weight. I didn't, I wasn't overly fat or anything, but it was just, I didn't look the part and I wasn't happy. I think I fought Ron Guerrero and then Luis Monaco, right? Am I right?
Yes.
I mean, Melvin Foster, then Luis Monaco, or am I wrong on that?
No. It was after John Sargent, it was Ron Guerrero, then Luis Monaco.
Oh, okay. And then Melvin Foster, right?
Yes.
Cool. But those fights, you know what I mean? And I remember Luis Monaco was the guy who actually caught Buster Douglas after the bell and stopped him. You know, I don't know if you remember that, but he was the guy who did that, and it was like a big thing. But anyway, going through that to the fight that I had, it was actually my first. I think, my first televised fight.
I'm gonna test your knowledge real quick here, Eddie. Luis Monaco, the fight before boxing you, who did he box?
Damn. Before fighting me?
Literally.
It wasn't Buster.
1 month before fighting you.
You know, I know it wasn't Buster. I don't think he fought Buster Douglas then. It was late, you know, when he fought Buster Douglas, but I really don't know. I can't. I'm really not.
Malik Scott.
I knew you was gonna say that. God, I knew you were gonna say that. How did I know you were gonna say Malik? I just thought, I was like, you know what? It probably was Malik, and then boom,
it's
here
funny
you go.
Because he boxed Malik Scott a month before he boxed you, but that was actually their rematch. Malik Scott had beaten him in 2001, 3 years earlier, but they had the rematch in 2004 in November. Strangely enough, but that's what happened there.
It's crazy. That's incredible to think that he fought us successfully. That's weird. Anyway, but yeah. And
Eddie, sorry to jump in again. I just can't believe when I look at some of these guys that you fought. You know, like we're talking about Luis Monaco there. You look at their resumes, and at the time you boxed him, he's 13-28 with 4 draws. I would just see that name and just scroll past like he's nothing, right? But when you actually look at who he boxed, and again, we did this on last week's show, it's unbelievable the people that this guy boxed. I mean, do you want me to take you down memory lane real quick?
A little bit. Let's hear it.
So,
I want to hear it.
He wins his first fight on a split decision over 4 rounds. He's 1-0. In his second fight, he gets knocked out in a round by Butterbean, right? Then he comes back with a draw, then he loses, then he gets another draw, gets a couple of wins, another loss. Then he beats by KO in 5 rounds Peter McNeely, yeah? Which is just crazy. Peter McNeely at the time was 40-2. You know, it was a year after the Mike Tyson fight, and he beats Peter McNeely, so he's the first man to beat McNeely after Mike Tyson did. After McNeely, he loses to Trevor Berbick, then to Michael Grant. He boxes Jeremy Williams, loses to him in 3 rounds. Then he comes back out of nowhere and beats an undefeated Kevin McBride. Yeah. He knocks him out in 5 rounds with him as well. Then he comes back and beats Michael Dokes, right? And then of course that's when he gets disqualified in the first round for hitting Buster Douglas after, as you said. But then, you know, a few fights later, he's back against Lawrence Claybay. He boxed Vitaly Klitschko, then Monty Barrett, then Lamont Brewster, all in a row. This guy boxed everyone. Maurice Harris on the record, Ross Purity, Malik Scott twice, like we say, yourself. Boy, oh boy, everyone. Incredible.
Yeah, he was tough. I remember, I think I dropped him or I forget, something like that. I can't remember what happened, but I think I dropped him. I got cut in that fight too. I remember at some point in that fight, I remember getting cut. But I beat him obviously very easily, but I don't know if I dropped him or something happened. I know I got cut. And it might have been, I think he headbutted me or something. You know, there's one of them things. But anyway, he was a tough guy. He wasn't just going to roll over. You know what I mean? You had to get him out of there or beat him down.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, thanks for taking me back down memory lane, making me think of, you know what's funny about a lot of this? And I'm mentioning a lot of these guys, and I'm saying, oh, these guys really, and I'm not trying to say they weren't nothing. That wasn't the case. It was just, I'm on the upswing. And these guys they're just trying to make a living, to be honest. They're not necessarily in it to win it all the way. I mean, they're hoping they get an opportunity to win it. Like I said, they'll try for a round or two. And if it doesn't seem like it's going to work, like if the guy's too good, they chalk it up. You know what I mean? But the idea of the amount of talent that these guys have been in the ring with, I mean, listen, they could tell their grandkids, look, I fought this guy, I fought that guy, and legitimately have a say and say that I was a professional. My record wasn't great, but But at the same time, I was in there with the best there was. And if I could have won any of those big fights at any point, maybe things are different. You know what I'm saying? Maybe somebody gets behind me and starts to give me a winning streak. Who knows? I may end up winning a real title. And that's the difference. You know what I mean? That's the difference between these guys and these situations they're in, and then guys like myself.
Exactly.
Who, trust me, I didn't come from a great place to say, oh, there's a lot of talent up there. Don't get me wrong. There was a good amount of talent around me. But for me to be the leading candidate of the talented dudes coming from my area, just nobody really would have expected that, especially being a heavyweight. You know what I mean? It's just not likely. But anyway.
Again, I just want to jump in and say, we're speaking there about Ron Guerrero, and I mentioned along the way that Ron Guerrero beat... Who did I say? No, sorry, not Ron Guerrero. Luis Monaco.
Oh,
yeah, Luis Monaco. I'm getting a little bit confused. Obviously, I said that he beat Kevin McBride. So you beat Luis Monaco. He beats Kevin McBride. McBride beat Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson beat Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes beat Muhammad Ali. You're at the top of the tree there, man.
Yo, I like how you did that. That's nice. That makes me feel really good about myself and my career. Thank you. Even though we know there's a lot of different things that came into play with that, but whatever. You know what I mean? I'm taking it. I'm taking it, Joey. I am taking it. Thank you. We got to get back to the story. It's going to be a quick one. We're not going to go too long.
I apologize.
And of course, no. It's not. No, you don't have to apologize. I'm thanking you for that. Listen, has been good, but it's not what I wanted it to be. But if I let you tell it, who knows? I may be in the hall. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? So I appreciate that, Joey. You know what I mean? But those few fights, I recently said I started to gain, like, I don't say gain weight, but at one point I had gotten my weight really nice and manageable around 209, and this was previous to these more recent times. Well, when I was fighting for the title and all that, so I had did it, and I was really what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplined in that aspect with my diet mainly. Obviously, the training, you don't got to worry about that. I was training like a maniac with my dad there, but things get away from you, and you start to live life, even if you're training, even if you're working, even if you're focused. And when it started to happen, I noticed that my weight had started to come up a little bit, and I didn't look as I wanted to. And the funny enough, I was still in great shape, but I had a fight coming up, and a fight that was made through the Blue Horizon. And it was actually, I think at that point, it was the first Blue Horizon televised card in a long time, because they used to have a lot of televised fights with, ESPN and USA when they had USA Tuesday night fights or Friday night fights or whatever they had back in the day. They did a lot of them at the Blue. They did some at the Blue. And ESPN decided to put this card together and put me on the undercard. I can't remember who the main event was. I know you probably know, Joe, if you look at the card. But I was fighting Ross Purity, and Ross Purity was the first guy, if I'm not mistaken, to beat Wladimir Klitschko.
Yes, he was.
Now we all know, yeah, he was. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we all know Wladimir in the early part of his career, even though he was extremely talented and extremely athletic, he had a little issue with his, I don't say his conditioning, but and Ross Purity was known. Nobody's taking Ross Purity out. He's got a granite chin, and he's tough. He's strong, and he's there. He's there to, he comes to win, even if he knows for the most part he's not going to. You know what I mean? He still comes and gives a good go of it, and he did that with Wladimir, and Wladimir got tired, and I think it was the 10th or 11th round of that fight, which was a championship fight. Yeah. He ended up exhausting him, completely exhausted. Ends up stopping him. Wins Vladimir's, I think, I can't remember what title it was, but I know it was a world title that he won.
No, it was just an international belt at the time.
Yeah, international, you know what it is. We all know that's
international.
It's not the WBC title. It's the international. So it's not quite the world title, but beating a guy like Wladimir Klitschko at the time, he's an up and comer. You know what I mean? That was a big fight for him. So we look at his history, and I'm thinking, first of all, this is my first TV fight. I'm looking like, damn, and I'm fighting this guy, the guy to beat Wladimir, and they telling me, different things you hear. It's not my people who are telling me I need to be really careful and worried about this guy. What I'm hearing from my people is, man, this guy ain't nothing. You gonna go in there, you gonna take care of business like you always do. You know what I mean? Handle your business and we're gonna go home with this win. But, in my mind, I'm looking at his history. And remember, like I told you, everybody's always trying to knock the guy down before the fight. Remember, we talked about that. And after the fight, then they try to build him up as to be the greatest fighter ever, you know what I mean, that you just beat. But the reality of it is, I'm thinking in my mind, I can't discredit what this guy's done. Even though, he's lost the majority of his fights or some of his fights, he has been in fights and always finishing on his feet, always in the fight because he's a big puncher. So all these things are going through my mind. You know what I mean? We didn't have all of the Wi-Fi and all that. So I had made my ring walk, and it was different. There was no music. There was nothing going on because it was all about the TV fight. It was all about the TV. That's the only thing we were concerned about. So there was no music. There was no nothing. He was already in the ring. I go out to the ring, and then we're standing there, which seemed like forever. It might have been it seemed like maybe 15 minutes we were standing in the ring. And we get in the ring, and normally I'm used to going around the ring, doing my normal thing, checking the ropes, like my dad always taught me to do. And instead, I'm looking at the ground, and it's like wires everywhere. Like literally like snakes. Like you can't put your foot there. You put your foot, you twist your ankle. Fight over. Or you're going to really struggle in this one. You know what I mean? So I'm like, damn, you literally had to get in and stand in one spot till they did all their pre-fight stuff, all of the talk, or whatever, who was ever doing the whatever the talk was going, with the network, and we were just standing there, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. I've never been involved in anything like this up to this point, and I'm looking across the ring, and there's this big 6'3", 6'4", massive dude, and he, business on his usual face, like not looking nervous, not looking worried, but just looking like menacing to me. And all of these things are going through my, damn, he fought Klitschko. He beat Klitschko. He didn't beat this guy. Oh man, what's going on? And all this stuff is going through my mind. And these times you got to go back and you got to look at what you've done. You know what I'm saying? You got to kind of boost yourself up, and you got to understand, look, you know what I mean? This is what you basically are doing it for. You want this kind of competition. Look who I've been in the gym with. Look who I've sparred and beat up. You know what I mean? On my way here. You know what I mean? Those guys were better than him. They're more heralded than he is. I should be able to get in here and handle business. And eventually, like I said, the closer to the fight comes to the end, when they announce the names and all that stuff starts to fade, and it just becomes business as usual. You start getting more ferocious as you get closer to the fight, and then boom. And I remember getting in there, I was a little nervous, a little worried, because you're thinking about the power. You don't want to get caught. You don't want to get knocked out for your first loss on TV in front of all these people. But I'm in there, and I started to realize, midway through maybe like the first round, I'm like, man, this guy's just, he's strong, he's tough, and he's there, but he's not special. There's nothing like that he's throwing that is really like shocking. You know what I mean? And, I'm fast, I'm moving, and I'm making him, have to kind of stalk me. You know what I mean? But I'm not moving like I'm running. I'm just moving circles around him. You know what I mean? Kind of like I did with Samuel Peter later on. We ain't talking about that right now. But his footwork wasn't terrible. Like, he understood how to get to you. You know what I mean? But I have my hands up. My upper body movement was pretty good, obviously. At that time, it's better now than it was then. But, I'm not giving myself enough credit at that time, because I'm still in the process of, like, I don't want to take punches flush on my body because these guys are too powerful. If they hit me and hit my hands, my body with these little gloves on, man, they're going to break me in half. You know what I mean? I'm thinking that in my mind, not thinking about all of the work and all of the strength work I did, all of the things that I've done to get to this point. I'm just consistently knocking myself down. And then he starts to throw a few shots, and I just catch him like I would if I was in the gym. And it didn't feel like anything. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy, I guess he punched hard, but it didn't really bother me. And I remember he hit me with a clean shot. Boom. And I remember when I watched the replay of it, I think Teddy was on there at the time too. Teddy, oh, it was a good shot. You got to be careful. You can't stand in front of a guy, puncher like that or whatever. And I remember taking the shot, and everybody got all excited. And I'm like, I didn't even feel that. I remember he hitting me right in the head, boom, and I didn't even feel it. Like I didn't feel like you get hit with a shot. Sometimes you get with a really good shot, you'll know, damn, I'm dizzy or I'm hurt or my legs got a little weak or something from the effects of it. I didn't feel anything. And I'm like, oh man, so it's maybe I am a little tougher or maybe I am a little better than I thought I was. And as the fight starts to go on, you get more and more confidence, and I'm outboxing them. I'm hitting them with counter shots. I'm doing the things that, I've practiced, time and time again. And then I'm going back to the corner, hearing my dad chew me out, even if I do good. So, but in my mind, I'm so focused on this fight that I'm sometimes not even hearing what's going on in the corner. You know what I mean? You do get that tunnel vision at times, and you're just not seeing or hearing or anything almost. You're just thinking about what you're going to do. You know what I mean? And the training and what you've done, thousands of times takes over. You know what I mean? If you're in good shape. And I just remember going through the fight and everything went as I expected it to. Went to a decision. Obviously I wasn't gonna stop that guy in the way he was careful. And, he gave me work. He made me understand, I learned a lot in that fight. You know what I'm saying? I learned a lot. He helped me understand what it is to fight at that kind of a level. You know what I'm saying? And this, don't get me wrong, he wasn't, elite, at that point. And he was kind of on a downswing, but he was still always there. You know what I mean? But he kind of said, this is the kind of thing you're going to run into when you fight big heavyweights and guys like this going forward. There's going to be guys that you can punch on all night long, and they're going to be able to take it and keep coming at you. And you just got to be able to use what you have skill-wise to, carry the night. And then not only that, after the fight was over, he gave me great reviews. He said, he said some great things about me and told me, like, you move really well. You do this. You're a championship level fighter. And we had talked about Wladimir a little bit at length afterwards at the Blue. And he was like, listen, you move great. You're an excellent fighter. You're probably, one of the better talented fighters I've fought. But if you ever get an opportunity, or not to say opportunity, if you ever get put in position to have to fight Wladimir Klitschko, he said, delay it as long as you possibly can and avoid it if you can, unless you have no choice. Because it's like he was basically saying, I don't care how well you move, that guy is a monster. And I'm like, damn. And this is coming from the guy who beat him. You know what I mean? You would have thought he would have said something else, but he said that guy is as advertised, even 10 times over. Like he said, he is, he lost that fight, and I exhausted him. I did what I was supposed to do, but he said if I had to fight him again, I wouldn't fight him again. He said even if I beat him, I still wouldn't fight him again. And I said, damn. Then he told me about some of the politics that went on along with, because he had got that title from him, and he had I think he had defended it or something at one point, or he did something with it, I can't remember, and they ended up stripping him. Because he's, being a champion or having a title, you got to have you got to be able to put people in the seats. So it's like when John Ruiz won his title, you know what I mean? And I'm just kind of going into this to kind of show you what I'm talking about. It's like people didn't really 100% want him with the title, because he, like, the quiet man. You know what I mean? There's really not a lot to look for beside the fact that he's the first Spanish, I think, heavyweight champion. I think first from Spanish descent, I think. Is that, am I correct on that, Joey?
I am not sure. I know, obviously, Andy Ruiz became the first Mexican, but I'm not sure. Maybe he was the first Hispanic. Maybe.
Yeah. Yes, he was. He was, because he beat Evander Holyfield. I think I think Evander had the belt at the time, and he beat him. And I think he was the first Hispanic. Yeah, I think he was. Sure, I remember watching the fight at a friend's house. But anyway, him having the belt, though he was the first Hispanic heavyweight, which is a big thing, and it's like it wasn't exciting. He was the originator of the jab and grab. You know what I mean? John Ruiz. A lot of people didn't really like his style. So him having the titles wasn't like, gotta watch that heavyweight fight with him on. You know what I'm saying? So you want him to lose the title. So there'll be all kind of different things that'll happen, and you'll try to force him into fights that he's not going to win, and things like that. I mean, this is just the politics of it. This is how you get people out of position. It's like when you look at me, It's like when you look at me, my career, a lot of my career, right, that I was always getting put in fights that 90% of people, it was outside of my crew, would have thought I was going to lose. And the only thing that kept me going toward that title was that I kept on winning. I just found a way to win, whether I dominated the guy or whether I stopped. I had to do something special to win the fight, because if it was up to them, I wouldn't have been in that position. So they just kept putting roadblocks that were supposed to be too big for me to go through. You know what I mean? And he kind of explained how that happens and how that works a little bit. Now, we didn't have a whole lot of time to talk, but he kind of let me know some things. And then going from there, I had a different understanding of boxing than, you know, what I had before him. Now, granted, Monty Barrett and different guys who I've talked to and had relationships with kind of give you a little bit here and there. And when you actually talk to a guy who's been on the real bad side of it, you know, he'll let you know. And it's like, oh, I see. So this is what I got to expect, you know, going forward with boxing. Or at least I hope I don't. That kind of thing, you know what I mean? But anyway, it was a great opportunity. But I'm going to go through this pretty quick. After that fight, I had to watch the replay of it. And when I watched the replay, I remember before I said I gained a little weight. A little, you know, my weight wasn't, well, I didn't say gained a little weight. It was a little bit, wasn't nothing major, but my body didn't look the way I liked it. And then I looked at this fight. Now, this is a televised fight. You know what I mean? Nationally televised. So I'm looking and I see it and I was just disgusted. I was so disgusted. I was so disgusted with how I looked that I fought on Tuesday. I was running on Thursday. I was on the track running on Thursday. I begged my dad. I begged him. And you know, they don't have to beg him to do anything workout-wise. But I begged him to go to the gym. No, we ain't going to the gym. You are taking this rest of this week off. And that's one of the first times I ever heard him say anything like that. And this, of all times, I'm like, are you kidding me? I want to work out and you won't let me work out. He's like, no, you're not working out until Monday, Eddie. And that's it. And I'm sitting there like, man, I got to do something. So I'm going out, I'm running. And after the fight, I think maybe a month or so after, we had got a call to go help Hasim Rahman, and this kind of goes into a situation where a couple of years before, I think, or a year or so before, I had the opportunity to go swallow Hasim Rahman in Bally's for his fight with John Ruiz, and it was kind of all tied to the Monty Barrett camp situation, and because they had the same managers, so they kind of had, you know, we'll have Eddie come down and spar with him because, you know, he was good work for Monty. So, you know, I went and worked with Rock, and I'm going to be honest, first time I met him wasn't the greatest time. He was not the best person to be around at that time. Whatever was going on with his team and personal things, he just wasn't a good person at the time. He had a crazy attitude. Like when I walked up to him, this is Hasim Rahman, former undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I'm like, yo, I want to go up and talk to this guy. I want to shake his hand. Boom, I put my hand out to shake his hand. He basically gave me the dead hand and was like, yeah, what's up, man? And just walked past me. I'm like, damn, I guess he just expected to knock me out. But then I had an attitude. So I go in there and we spar. And I felt like I did well, really well. And then I'm also finding out through that scenario that they have us doing 5-minute rounds. I'm like, hold up. And I'm fresh off a fight. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn. So I'm fine with it because, like I said, I'm fresh off a fight. I'm good. I'm in good shape. But I mean, they had us doing 5-minute rounds. We didn't have a proper bell or a 3-minute, you know, clock sitting right there at ringside. So Steve, my brother, who was taping, and we were taping this sparring, who started taping it, was like, yo, man, they on 5-minute rounds. I didn't really know what their aim was with that. I don't think it was anything, you know, any malice intent or anything like that with me. Like they were trying to get him to hurt me or get me tired. I think it was more for him and what he was going to be, you know, facing, and, you know, just, I don't know, just for conditioning aspects for him. But it just didn't work out. So I think I sparred him one time. I did really well with him. And I remember him, you know, having comments the first time, like, man, because I was switching southpaw, I was doing all this different stuff that I normally do. And he was like, man, you know, what did this do? Switching southpaw? You got a runner down here, man. I ain't fighting Roy Jones. I'm fighting John Ruiz. Why y'all bring him down here? And he was upset with them and his managers because they brought a fighter like me up there, which in every sense of the word, he is 100% right. I was not the guy to bring up there to fight, to spar, because my style is nothing but frustration for a guy like him, or for any fighter, to be quite honest. And it's like, why are you doing that and then he fought that Saturday, and this was Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday. And I'm like, so I mean, the more you think about it, the more he was correct, even though he was being a bit of a jerk about it at the time. I understand why. You understand? So fast forward to us after the Ross Purity fight, and we get the call because of that particular camp and how they were so pleased with, obviously, how well I did with him, but angry at the same time because he ended up losing the fight with John. And he's getting ready now to fight Monty Barrett, which is one of my old friends and guys I've been in the camp with. But they call me and they say, hey, look, I need you for this camp. Could you come out? So they talk to my people and, of course, me. And I'm going to Vegas from Philly. And everybody knows how much I love flying. So, I don't want to go, but I got to do it. Plus, I remember how nice of a guy.
So this time, obviously, they didn't still have the same manager this time, I'm guessing.
I don't, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm sure they did. Okay. I don't think they did. He might have been. I think he might have been managing himself by then, because at this point, Rahman, was a little, it was a little different at this now. I think I can't remember when he fought Lennox. I think that was after, but all of these things, him, I don't even remember. No, he fought Lennox before that. What am I saying? But anyway, he's just in a different place now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's gotten himself back together, and he's about to fight Monty Barrett. So they called me out, and I don't think he had the same managers though. And I talked to him when we landed in Vegas. I'm sitting there thinking like, man, I don't want to go to this guy's camp, man. This guy was, he was this, he was that. And, he wasn't what I expected. He's a champion, former champion, blah, blah, blah. And he had this attitude. But I talked to his people. I was like, man, what's good? What's up? He's like, oh yeah, man. Rock's looking forward to talking to you and meeting you, man. He wanted to talk to you about what's going to happen and just in general. And he was real pleased that you would come out to camp because, you did so well with him and you helped him. Not helped him, but you did well with him at the first time. So he wants that kind of work, and he needs it for this particular fight. So I'm sitting there like, I'm not expecting him to be that way, but whatever. And I end up meeting him and hanging out with him. And I'm like, man, this is one of the coolest dudes ever. What happened? Like, what happened in the other camp? What was wrong with him? I wanted that. And I even talked to him about it. I was like, yo, what was wrong? He's like, yeah, man, I was having managerial problems. So that obviously tells you that he probably obviously didn't have the same manager at the time, because he was in Vegas. And at that time he was up in, I think they were, they were in New York somewhere. But he was like, yeah, I was just going through a lot with the management team, personal stuff going on in my life. And it just, I wasn't really properly prepared for this fight, and I knew it. And he said, you just you just put it on the center of the screen, basically, for me to see that I wasn't, because you just did everything you wanted in there. And I'm supposed to be getting prepared for a fight that Saturday against a world championship level guy. I should be better prepared. I wasn't, and that's why I ended up losing. And he even mentioned, he said I wasn't right for that fight. And he said my mental was just out of place too. So, but he said this time I'm good, and the sparring is going to be a whole lot different. But of course, in my mind, I had other ideas. But I will say that we had some good sessions, like really good sessions. Like him as a person, and I'm gonna tell you, this dude was calling people about me, talking about because he was so supportive of what my skills, is just like the way I could fight. He was like, yo, man, forget. And at this time, these guys were, named guys. Like, he said, man, forget Calvin Brock, man, Samuel Peter, who this dude right here beats them all easily with one hand tied behind his back. I'm like, damn, he on the phone with like big people, like dudes that his people. And I'm sitting there like, man, I don't know what to say to that. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit there and act like, you know what I mean? But he was saying all these things, and I was like, I just kept thinking like, this definitely is not the same dude that I met in AC. You know what I mean? It's a different guy. You know what I mean? You can see how situations affect people. You know what I mean? You're in a bad situation with your manager, with your wife, or whatever. It can just affect your performance on so many levels and your attitude toward people who don't even know what's going on. And he kind of really, really gave me insight on the first time you meet people is not always the time to meet them. You know, maybe you give them a second chance. You know, obviously the first impressions are lasting a lot of the time. But if you give somebody a chance, they can actually turn out to be really good people. And he was a really, really good dude. And I mean, this dude come to my fights, invited me, you know, all kind of different things. He was a really, really good dude. And I was happy to help him, even though he beat Monty Barrett, who was another good friend of mine. I was happy to help him, you know, get ready for the fight after he was the person that he actually showed me who he was as a person. So, but it was a great camp. And in this, before, you know, when I came from the Ross Purity fight, like I told you, I was a little heavy, and I had trained. Now this camp was in May, if I'm not mistaken. I had trained from that moment after the Ross Purity fight, all the way to that particular point, that camp, through that camp. Then after Hasim's camp was over, after Rock's camp was over, I went back home, and there was another camp that they called me to go spar at. Because I had to fight then September 9th of that September 9th, the following month after the August, when I went back home from Hasim Rahman's camp. You know what I'm saying? So I had been training for what? May, June, July, about 5 months. 5 months. And it was hard, every bit of it. And we were in Vegas training at Rock's camp in the summer. In Vegas. In the summer, dry heat, like to the point where we had to run at 5 a.m, not because we wanted to get up early to run to be out before everybody. No, because we had no choice. Because if we got up at any later than 5 a.m. to run, the sun was going to be out. And if the sun was going to be out, you're going to die trying to run out there. That's how hot it was. It was 110, 115 degrees. If we tried to walk to the store at noon, that your ass was in trouble. You know what I mean? So. And believe me, my manager's son, who was a good friend of mine at the time, we walked to the store. He almost didn't make it. Almost passed out on the sidewalk. So, you know, those types of things. And I trained all through that time just because I saw myself after that Ross Purity fight. But, you know, things like that happen. And, you know, I shouldn't have made that the reason for me training so hard. You know what I mean? It should have just been because I just need to be in shape. I just need to be right. I need to be focused. I didn't want it to be it shouldn't have been a fat camp, but that's essentially what it was. After that fight, it was like a fat camp. Like I'm getting all this weight off, and I did it again later on. But I really feel like it's important to get your body right. But I really needed to really focus on just the diet aspect of it more so than the training. And I'm not going to go into the next fight yet. I'm going to wait till, I guess we're going to have to wait till the next episode. But I'm going to tell you what happened in that particular fight that came up. And I'm going to tell you why it happened and why the training I did, even though it was good and it was, you know, it was for a good cause, probably wasn't the best idea.
Okay. Cliffhanger ending there from Eddie. So that is episode 3 of the Lockdown Knockdown / Eddie's Chamber of Secrets, whatever you want to call it. Again, we're still open for suggestions. So there you have it. We've gone through a couple stories there, obviously mentioning the Ron Guerrero fight, the first 10-rounder that Eddie had at the time. We talked there briefly about Louis Monaco and his Monaco, I should say, and his crazy record. Ross Purity, when Eddie beat the guy that beat Wladimir Klitschko, a young undefeated Wladimir Klitschko, I think was 24-0 with 21 KOs at the time of that fight. And then, of course, we mentioned there the 2 training camps with Hasim Rahman, the former heavyweight world champion, the initial one where he wasn't the nicest guy, and Eddie probably sparred even better, even meaner because of that. And when he come back the next time, when they called you back the next time, totally different guy, very welcoming, and probably quite humbled as well. So there we have it. That is the episode 3, like I say, from Eddie for the story time thing. And yeah, just before we wrap up all the talking, the final thing to do is to welcome our sole guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former IBF Welterweight World Champion. It is, of course, Mr. Kermit Cintron. Kermit, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, man. How's everything with you, man?
All good, my friend. Obviously, crazy times for us all, but all good for me. How about yourself?
Not too bad, man. Just home, doing some home projects. Wifey has me working, man.
So Kermit, I want to start with with your early life here, and obviously discuss the boxing part after that. What happened before I guess boxing kind of came and saved you in some respect? I feel like it's important to inform our listeners, especially our UK listeners, of your backstory, which is very, very tragic. Actually, you were born obviously in Puerto Rico, of course. Do you have good memories? Happy memories of your time back home when you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, my family and I, we were close. We still are. Tragedy happens. It's part of life, but definitely good memories. I remember just parents taking me to the beach all the time, going to the small side road restaurants and grab something to eat. Family gatherings as birthdays and stuff like that. So I had good memories. From what I remember, as a kid, I lost my mom when I was 8 years old, and my dad. By the time my dad passed away, I was already in the United States. At that time, I was 12 years old. I had some good memories. My family, actually my father's side of the family, we are still close. We still keep in touch and all that.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Like I say, my question was going to be how young were you when your mother got ill? You answer there that you were 8 when your mother passed away, which obviously was due to cancer. Now that's when your father sent you to the States. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you was in Pennsylvania when your father sent you there, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so you went to live with your uncle, who of course was a boxing contender himself, Uncle Benjamin. So your father kept in contact with you, of course. He was back home still, and then you were 12 when you lost him to a heart attack, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, so like I say, very, very tragic beginnings there. You first start boxing as an amateur at the age of 19, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty late, to be honest. You only had 29 amateur fights, Kermit, if I'm not mistaken. Did you enjoy the amateur game at all?
It was okay. I didn't do much in the amateurs. I know I have won the Golden Gloves for Pennsylvania the 1 year. But other than that, it was a learning. I was learning. It was a learning experience for me. As you said, I started late in the amateurs. A lot of tournaments that I've done in the amateurs, like the national pals and stuff like that. Those guys were, had over 100 fights. So the experience for me wasn't there, but I had some good times.
Yeah. And getting onto your pro career, you made your debut October 7th, 2000 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Your first fight, you actually boxed a southpaw. Do you remember much of your debut?
I didn't remember him being a southpaw, but it was actually a fighter from I think he was from Ohio, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember much of him, but I know he was a tough opponent.
Yeah, Jesse Williams is his name. Yeah, from Ohio. You're right. Yeah, Youngstown.
Okay.
I'm gonna fast forward now to May the 1st, 2004. Obviously, by this point, you're 22-0 with 20 KOs. You're boxing former world title challenger Elio Ortiz in Atlantic City. Now, Elio Ortiz was a big puncher as well. You managed to KO him in just 6 rounds. At that point, that surely must have been your biggest career win at the time.
Yes, he actually was. And when it comes to experience, he had the most experience from one of the fighters from before. It was good. It was a good fight. It was a good performance. It was a good name under my belt.
And your next fight obviously would be against Teddy Reed for the NABF welterweight title and the interim WBO welterweight title in a fight that ends in a knockout win for yourself in 8 rounds. Now, last week we spoke to Nate Campbell, former world champion, and he talks about how hard Teddy Reed could punch. I think they shared a sparring session once. He said he could really punch. But you got your man out of there. Do you remember much about that fight there? Could he punch?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was actually the biggest puncher of my career till I fought, what the heck is his name? He's from the Philly area. Just a recent fight, not so long ago, like maybe 2 years ago. But Teddy Reed he was a good puncher, definitely. That night I was just on point with everything that I've worked on in the gym. That's the camp that I had at Ali's camp here in Pennsylvania, Deer Lake, which was a pretty interesting, exciting, very motivated atmosphere. And it was definitely a great experience for me. It was a hard training camp, as it was for my my first world title fight. Coming to the ring, everything was just on point. I brought my A game, everything that my trainer we worked on in the gym and the camp. It all worked. It all worked that night, and so it was probably, I want to say, one of my best performances.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, that win there got you your shot at the full WBO world title. Antonio Margarito being the champion. April 23rd, 2005 being the date. However, it wouldn't be your night. You were served up your first career loss by KO in the 5th. Tell us what you recall from that night that I guess you probably don't look back on with the fondest of memories.
It's just the fights that you learn from. That's a fight that I, coming out from the Teddy Reed fight, I had broken my hand. I had surgery after that, so I should have, really had taken a tune-up fight. But me being a fighter, a very competitive type athletic guy, just went and accepted the challenge. And that's what boxing in my era was all about. Just going out there and just trying to win the world title fights. It's not like today where, you make your pro debut and you're already expecting to be making $1 million in your first pro debut fight, and that's just ridiculous. But my era, it was a great, enjoyable moment because, again, we fought to become world champions. Nowadays, it's not about the belts.
Yeah, it's much more of a business these days, which is a downfall really in boxing. Did that loss turn you into a better fighter? Did you learn a lot from that loss now, looking back?
Oh, absolutely. Just looking back at it, it's just like, there's a lot of things that definitely went wrong. It's okay. It was my first world title fight. Margarito had the better experience. He had he has fought bigger fights before I did. But as a young prospect fighter, you're gonna go through those fights, and that's how you get tested. If either you have it or you don't. That night it wasn't my night. Just after the fight, I was back in the gym 2 days later, and I trained hard. I came back with I forget the guy that I fought right after Margarito, just to get me back in the winning streak. I felt good. It was just I was heartbroken, of course, because I wanted to win the world title that night. As a fighter, that's a dream come true for a lot of fighters that come and do the boxing. It's one of the reasons why we do boxing. We take that that moment to shine. And again, it wasn't my night to shine, and it's definitely a night that I was very heartbroken. But having a good team behind me, very supportive family and team that kept me up.
Yeah, because you mentioned there you came back against Francisco Parra, but you were actually out of the ring for almost a year and a half following that defeat. I was going to ask, what kept you out the ring for that period of time there?
Oh, I had, I still, my hand was not properly healed. And as time went on, contract with my promoter at that time was Main Events. They had dropped me, so it was tough for me to get fights on top of that.
Yeah, so like I said, when you returned, you bounced back with that win over Francisco Parra. 5 months later, after that, you're back against David Estrada in Palm Beach, Florida. Now, Estrada had that record at the time of 18-2. His 2 losses came to Ishai Smith and Shane Mosley via points decisions that he'd lost. However, you stop him in 10 rounds and made a bit of a statement that night, to be completely honest. That win would obviously get you another shot at a world title, this time for the vacant IBF Welterweight world title against Mark Suarez. October 28th, 2006, a night I'm guessing you'll never forget for the rest of your life, Kermit.
Oh, well, it was a great night. That David Estrada fight was actually a very, very tough, competitive fight. I know, David Estrada is a tough fighter, but it was one of the nights that I needed to be on my A game at all times. At that time, I was with Emmanuel Steward. It's just one of the nights that was a very, very important night. I definitely needed to make a statement. The fight was on ESPN. It was, it was televised, and a lot of people watched it. And again, it's just one of the nights that I just need to make sure that I performed my best and make the statement.
And then, yeah, like I say, the big one, October 28th, 2006. Just tell me about the night your dreams came to fruition. Obviously, that must have been a dream for you when you first ever put on a pair of gloves to become a world champion. You did it that night.
Oh, it was a good night for me. I mean, I wish the fight was shown on the regular networks, TV, ESPN or HBO or Showtime. But it was at that time, I think the fight was shown on on some I don't know, internet channel or something. I don't know, but it was a come true for me. It's just a fight that definitely I will never forget. I know exactly what happened from the first round to the end of I think the 5th or 6th round. And it was an important night for me as I fell the first night to my world title fight, and it was a second chance to fight for a world title shot, and I wanted to make sure that I came out of there victorious. And
you certainly did, with a belt as well. Did your life change at all after that, outside of the ring? Did life change much?
It changed a little bit. I mean, I was definitely, more well known. More people supported me. More people came up to me. I'm walking around out the streets and stuff like that. So it changed a little bit for me. But in regards to I've stayed humble. One of the things that I never forget is where I came from. So that's always kept me humble to this day. But I know that I didn't allow being a world champion change me, and that's one thing that I made sure that didn't happen to me. A lot of fighters they change right away and they lose focus, and their careers never go the way they're supposed to. So no, I'm a homebody type guy. I love being with my family. I love being with my wife and kids. And that's what I did. For the most part, as a world champion, I just enjoyed the moment with my family, friends. That's pretty much it, man.
Yeah, that's I support that 100%. That's the way I'd do it if somehow I won a world title. But 9 months later, you made your first defence against Walter Matisse. It took you only 2 rounds to stop him. No one ever knocked him out that quick before or after that night. Tell us about that. Again, Matisse, it runs in that family. They can all punch.
He's definitely a good puncher. Not as hard as Teddy Reed, but he was a good puncher. Just getting trained by Emmanuel Steward, he's always had me prepared, always had me focused. And one thing about me, still to this day, I still think that I'm not done. I feel like I still have a fight in me. But I know that if I'm 100% focused, nobody can stop me. Nobody can beat me. I know that for a fact. I mean, I've proven over and over. When I'm 100%, nobody can beat me.
Yeah, like I say, you went through Matisse like a hot knife through butter. Your second defence came against Jesse Feliciano in November of 2007. You stop him in 10 rounds. Do you remember much about your second defence?
Oh, absolutely. First right hand that I threw that I landed on top of his head. My very first right hand, I landed on top of the head. I broke my hand right there and then. Oh. And, I had to do what I had to do to keep my belt. And, he makes it tougher when you have a tough opponent in front of you. But on top of that, you have a broken hand. You only got one hand to fight with. So it made it tough for me in regards to, having that broken hand. But, I did my part. I came out of there victorious. Again, Emmanuel Steward always had me prepared, always had me focused. And one thing that I loved about Emmanuel Steward, as soon as I first round was over, I went to the corner and I told him that my hand was broken. He made me forget about it. He didn't ever wanted to hear nothing. So that kept my focus in my fight as well. So that's just Emmanuel. He's just a good trainer like that. Just keeps you focused, keeps you away from thinking other things that's happening in that ring.
Everyone that's ever spent any time around Emmanuel, anyone that's been trained by him, it seems like a real privilege to have his presence around during fight night or in the gym or whatever. Everyone speaks so highly of him. Do you feel like he was probably or is probably the best trainer to have ever lived? Because a lot of people would say he probably was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know by far. I've met a lot of trainers and I've seen a lot of trainers train fighters, and no one is like Emmanuel Steward. There was days where I could never understand it, where there was days that I was in the gym training my butt off. There was days where I was in the gym with him, and I was the day of sparring, and he had scheduled a sparring for 10 rounds, and he stopped it at 2 rounds. Knowing that I'm getting ready for a big fight, he would stop it at 2 rounds. Oh, that's it, no more. You're looking too sharp. That's enough. So I was always confused about those days like that. It's like you go in there, you gotta train hard, but then he cuts that training day short, very short, on you, and you always wonder why. But he's the one with the experience, so you listen to your trainer. And that's how Emmanuel Steward is. He's good like that. If he sees that you're looking sharp, he's gonna pull out. He don't want you to overtrain. And that's one of the things that I've learned from him. You can't overtrain. You can't overtrain to go into a fight and be overtrained. You're not gonna perform your best.
Yeah, I love hearing stories about the great man because they're just phenomenal. Like I say, one of the most the biggest and best influences on boxing in recent years, be it inside and outside of the ring.
Absolutely, and hey, and keep an eye on Javen Hill, Sugar Hill, who's his nephew, and also Jonathan Banks. Those 2 guys, man, they're going to be great trainers, just like Emmanuel Steward was, and they were both under Emmanuel Steward. They both learned the game. And Javen Hill, he actually trained my fight. He worked my corner at the David Estrada because Emmanuel Steward was with Wladimir Klitschko in Spain, so he couldn't make it.
Okay.
Just in time for my fight. So Javen Hill, his nephew, worked my corner, and you know, he just another Emmanuel Steward. You know, I was comfortable just because you know, we've worked together before. But yeah, keep an eye on that on Javen Hill. They call him Sugar Hill, and then and Jonathan Banks, which I'm sure you've heard of him as well. Those two guys been under Emmanuel Steward, and it seems like they're heading the right direction as trainers.
Yeah, Sugar Hill obviously now working with Tyson Fury led him to that victory over.
Absolutely, I mean, absolutely. And you see what happens, right? He's a totally different fighter.
And
crazy.
And yeah, Jonathan Banks has been on this show a few times in the past. Was James Ali Bashir in the gym back when you were with Emmanuel or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. James is another guy, man. He's a great guy. He's one of those guys, man. You always wanted to have around you because he was just one of them guys that good trainer, absolutely. But outside the ring, as a person, if you felt down, where you know you just like that day you're down, you're having a bad day, Ali, he was the man to be around because he always made you laugh.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I second that. I back in January of this year, actually, I was out in the States, and he was. I don't know if you noticed, but he was working obviously the corner of the lady Ivana Habazin, who was going to box Clarissa Shields. Do you know about that at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, during the incident that happened, a few days later, you know, I did reach out to Bashir, and you know, he was okay. Yeah. He was upset, but overall, his health was okay. You know, and that's all that matters. But yeah, just you know. Yeah. Situations like that is what kills boxing, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. But obviously, you know, that was when the fight was supposed to happen the first time round. When it got rescheduled, which again was January this year, I was out there and I spent probably about 4 hours on fight day in Ali's in his hotel room with him, and we were all just speaking, and it was just I just shut up and listened because that guy knows so much. It's just honestly
he knows so much.
Yeah.
Truly, he knows the game from inside out. Definitely.
Honestly, it was a few hours that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. It was so brilliant to be with him. Yeah, back we went off on a tangent there a little bit. Back onto your career. Obviously, your third defense of your world title wouldn't prove successful. Kermit, a rematch against your former foe, Antonio Margarito. Once again, he was able to get the stoppage win, this time in round 6 at the Boardwalk Hall in April 2008. Was he in some ways perhaps your boogeyman? Tell us about that night there.
He could have been the boogeyman for me in my career. I don't know. But it was that night that I got away from my game plan, the game plan that Emmanuel Steward had for me. You know, I went and did my own thing, and I paid for it. I got caught, and you know that was on me. There was no one to blame but myself. You know, I was very prepared for that fight. You know, I went in there, my mind thinking I was going to knock him out, and that's what I went for. I went for the knockout instead of just, you know, using my jab, sticking to the outside, you know, with full work, like Emmanuel Steward wanted me to. And again, you know, just it was a fight that was on me. I can't blame my trainers. He had the proper plan for me. I just didn't follow it. And again, I guess you could call him the boogeyman, you know. I don't know, but you know, it's a shame because, you know, 2 times I fought him before he got caught with those loaded gloves, you know. And I know for a fact the second time when I fought him, there's a quote out there that came out of my mouth that I said in an interview that there was something in his gloves because I've never felt anything like it. It's out there. There's a quote out there that I say exactly those words. And here, you know, a couple years later went by, and he gets caught with whatever he had in his gloves.
Wow. So that was before he got busted. That's incredible. That is incredible. Yeah, horrible. You bounced back 7 months later with a unanimous decision points win over former world champion and extremely tough Lovemore and Do in Nashville, Tennessee, before then moving up in weight and boxing Sergio Martinez for the interim WBC junior middleweight world title. The fight ends in a majority draw over 12 rounds, very controversial. Talk us through that night there from your perspective, Kermit.
It was a very hard fight. Not just the fact that Martinez was a southpaw, but he was also slick, fast, and good footwork. So that made everything just was tough on my part. But I felt that I did enough to win the fight. I'm okay with the draw, but I felt like I did enough to win the fight. I know that at one point he had dropped me. It's not one of those rounds where like I was hurt. I was more arguing with the ref as I was kneeling and listening to his count. I personally thought it was a headbutt. That's how hard he hit me. But rewatching the fight, yeah, it was a punch. It was a clean punch that I walked into. It was more a punch that than when he was throwing the punch. I was slipping to the same side that he was throwing the punch, and I walked right into it. And when you don't see that punch, yes, it's a punch that's gonna hurt. But again, I was not dazed. I was not hurt. I knew where I was. A lot of people say that I didn't stand up in time, but clearly I was. It was a good fight, good experience for both of us. After my fight, he ended up becoming one of the best fighters, in our era. So I can't complain in the fact that I went draw with one of the best fighters. I think he ended up becoming I don't know if he was undisputed, but he had a couple belts on him, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I think he was. Was he he might have been undisputed. It slipped my mind at the minute as well. But again, you moved up in weight for that fight as well, which has to be mentioned. After that, 3 months later, only 3 months later, you're back in with another big puncher, the 15-0 undefeated Alfredo Angulo. At the time, you were able to outpoint him though over 12 rounds. That is when you return back to Puerto Rico. You defeat Juliana Ramos when he retires on his store after 5 rounds in October 2009. What was it like to go back home and put on a performance like that for your supporters back home? Honestly, after the Angulo fight, my career went downhill. I think I had done enough in my career to have earned the bigger fights, the bigger paydays. But it was always promised. Oh, you win this fight, you get this amount. You win this fight, you get this amount. Well, after the Martinez fight, I was promised to make $2 million, and I forget what fight it was. But instead, I fought Angulo for an amount of $250,000. Okay, after that fight, I was promised if I had won that fight, I was definitely going to be making a couple $1 million. Well, after that fight, I ended up fighting. It was more of a tune-up fight. It was not a challenging fight whatsoever. It was not a big fight. It's not a fight that I really wanted. But at the time, they wanted to keep me busy, and I took it. But after the Angulo fight, my motivation in boxing just went down out the door. I wasn't motivated as much anymore as I was before. Yeah, and again, after the Angulo fight and after the homecoming in Puerto Rico, that's when things get real crazy. I rewatched it back today. May 8th, 2010, at the Home Depot Center in Carson, California, you boxed Paul Williams, a man you were supposed to unify with, but that fight never ended up happening when you were both champions at welterweight. Here you are, though, boxing him at the weight above in a non-title bout. The fight just ends under the most bizarre circumstances. I, again, rewatched it today, but I still can't quite understand how you even fell out of the ring that hard. It was crazy. It was like an invisible person pushed you. What can you remember about that night there? Like I say, crazy.
Oh yeah, I remember the night. It was a great night. I felt good. I felt I was winning the fights from the first to the fourth round. I don't know, third round, whatever it was. I was counter punching him easily. I felt like I was outscoring him easily. He was, at one point, I know he was hurt, and that day that I was hurt, he was hurt. That night, where I clearly caught him with a good right hand, and he was hurt. You could tell in that fight that he was hurt. So we had tangled up, and I know at that time he had bent down just a little bit, where I could like put my forearm behind his head and press down on him, because one thing Emmanuel Steward had taught me was that, you can do that, make those guys tired like that, make their legs more fatigued. So I did that. That's one thing that I kept, that I learned from Emmanuel Steward. And so after that situation happened, he fell from all the pressure that I was putting on him. He fell down, and with the pressure that I had on him, when he fell down, it just took my momentum away that I just couldn't really control myself. And that's how I just fell out the ring. When I fell out, I hit a TV monitor on the side of my back, side of a rib back area, and knocked the wind out of me. So then after that, I believe I landed on the floor, and so I'm gasping for air. Like, I knew where I was. I was not hesitating. There was no hesitation in me at all. I was just trying to, catch my breath. And at that time, I know a doctor had come up to me and asking me if I was ready to continue. Well, I'm over here focusing on catching my breath, and he's asking me if I was ready to continue. Well, my answer at the time was no. He asked me 3 times, and in the third time, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And at the time, he had waved the fight on me. I tried to stand up. He had pinched me down with his knee. He pinched me down where he didn't want me to get up. Here he was, concerned that I had a punctured lung, head injury, a neck injury. I mean, it was a BS move on the doctor's part. I think it had everything to do with him working for Al Heyman. Al Heyman knew that night he was going to get knocked out, or Paul Williams was going to get knocked out that night for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, a real bizarre way to end the fight, and it was a great shame, really, because, like I say, you were supposed to box at welterweight. It would have been a unification. You box, quite a while after, non-title bout, and then just as it's kind of heating up, if you like, it ends like that. And yeah, you were mad as hell when they put you in that stretcher. Looking back, you were going crazy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they I don't understand why they couldn't give me. From what I remember, I think I had 5 minutes to and to get him back into the ring. Yeah. And it's a shame, and I know for a fact that they had. I'm telling you, they had changed the scorecards. I know for a fact they had changed the scorecards, because you don't have one judge have it 40-36, and then one judge having it, to Paul Williams, and then one judge or 2 judges have for Paul Williams. I think it was a BS move. And I'm telling you, it had everything to do with Al Heyman. Al Heyman had Paul Williams. That's his mentor, manager, whatever he is today to the fighters, advisor. I don't know. He's got so many titles under him. I don't know what to call him: promoter, manager, advisor, what. But in my opinion, I think he had everything to do with it.
Have you ever seen the film The Usual Suspects?
No, I have not.
Okay. There's a character in The Usual Suspects called, it's going to be kind of pointless me telling you this now, but if you ever watch the film one day, I call Al Heyman the Kaiser Soze of boxing, because there was a character in the Usual Suspects called Kaiser Soze who, it's a long story, but basically he was kind of like, I guess, everyone was really scared of this guy. He was like at the top of the mafia chain, but no one had ever even seen him. And in the end, it turned out he didn't even exist. Everyone was working for this invisible man, you know?
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
You had to text me that.
Yeah.
That way I have it. I can remember, and I can probably rent it or watch it somewhere.
Yeah. It's one of the classic films, but I will warn you, if you watch it, nothing in it makes sense at all until like the last minute of the film. Then it all comes together and it ends beautifully. It's really good.
Oh, that's always the best movies, man.
There you go. So definitely watch that one. You were out the ring for 14 months after that before stepping back in against the eventual IBF Junior Middleweight World Champion Carlos Molina. The fight took place back at the Home Depot Center in Carson, California. Again, more bad luck for you this time. You lost the unanimous decision over 10 rounds. What do you remember of that night there, Kermit?
Like I said to you, man, I was sick of boxing. Now I wasn't as motivated anymore. Again, after the Anguilla fight, my motivation for boxing was gone. I was just doing it because I love fighting. And I didn't do it for the money. It's just one of the things I just love fighting. And I love the sport of boxing. But when it comes to my career, the motivation just wasn't there anymore. Molina, he was a sparring partner of mine when I was getting ready for, I think it was for Margarito. I know that if I was there 100%, I could have easily knocked him out.
Okay, that's a statement, because he's still going now. He actually boxed on the weekend, believe it or not, in Mexico. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So just 4 weeks after that, you're back in the ring in Missouri against Antoine Smith. You beat him unanimously over 10. And then 3 months later is when you box arguably the biggest and best boxer in the sport today, Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, a young kid at the time. The fight takes place in Mexico for the WBC Junior Middleweight World title. However, on this occasion, you're stopped in 5 rounds. What was it like to fight someone like Canelo? Even though, back then he wasn't as good as what he is today, it's still a phenomenal fighter back then.
In all honest, I fought better at precisions. Again, I fought bigger punchers. Teddy was a bigger puncher than he was at that time. And then again, he was only a kid. I think he was like 20, 21 years old when I fought him. Sergio Martinez, to me, in my opinion, he's a better, slicker fighter than Canelo was at that time, as well. Again, it's just one of them nights that, again, my manager was able to get me that fight. I didn't ask for it. It was just handed to me, And I guess when you don't try, I guess everything is, false in front of you. That's a fight that I took in 3 weeks' notice. I fought in his hometown in Mexico City or wherever the fight was. I was not impressed with him in regards to back then. I was not. Today I am impressed with him, but back then I wasn't. At that time, I didn't feel like he was a big puncher. Like people made him sound like he was. He was strong, but not the biggest puncher. They made him look to be. But overall, I see him today. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm impressed with him. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't not be. He really is probably the number 1 or number 2 pound for pound guy. After that Canelo fight, you're out the ring for another, fairly long time. I think it was 16 months before coming back against Adrian Granados in Chicago. The fight ends in a split draw. Did you feel you did enough to get the decision that night?
Oh my God, I think I dominated every round except to maybe I gave him 4 rounds at most, and you know it was a ridiculous decision. Again, I thought I clearly beat him, but a draw is a draw. Whatever it is, what it is. How they have it a draw, I don't know. I guess because that's his hometown. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was definitely disgusted with the decision, but again, you know, it's boxing, and if you leave it up to the judges, you're gonna get screwed.
Yeah. Granados, you know, he was involved in a few decisions that I felt he should have actually got the decision at times, but that was probably one which, you know, he was probably lucky to get a draw. So just whizzing through the final stages of your fights pretty quickly here. You then embark on a 6-fight win streak despite taking a 2-year hiatus in between fights 2 and 3. You then had that technical draw against David Grayton in 2017 when the fight got stopped due to an accidental head clash. You were in the ring just 3 months later against Tyrone Brunson. That's the guy you were, I think, thinking about when we talked about big punchers.
Oh. To this day, he's probably the biggest puncher.
Yeah, because that was a very
strong.
Sorry, go on.
He was strong. He was strong, and he definitely was powerful. Definitely could punch. Absolutely. It's a shame that his career didn't go further than what it has, because he's a fighter that definitely could have been in trouble, as he was with me. He was definitely in trouble in every round, and he just puncher's luck, you know, I guess is what you want to call it.
Yeah, because you had him down twice in the 4th, and then he had you down, I think, 3 times in the 5th. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, definitely twice. And the 3rd knockdown was more of a push than anything else. And of course, you know, the ref is looking out for your health.
Yeah.
So he definitely stopped the fight prematurely, in my opinion. But I got to give it to Tyrone Brunson. He definitely came to win.
And then, you know, in your final fight, a no contest after 3 rounds when you were cut due to an accidental headbutt against Marcus Taylor in February 2018. So it's been over 2 years now, but you don't really sound like you're officially done. I see a tweet that you tweeted out a few weeks back, you know, saying that you'd come back to box a list of names. Is it really just that list of names? Like, where's your head at right now? Are you thinking about fighting again, or will it just be for those guys?
I would listen. I'm only 40 years old. I'm a guy that started at the age of 19. I don't have my body's not beaten down like have other fighters have. I feel great. I feel like I'm 25 years old. I know that if I'm 100%, I know I can get back on top, get back in the rankings. I just need a fight that will get me back in the rankings, and definitely would definitely could make more noise in the boxing world. But right now I'm also in discussions with introducing to MMA. There's been offers out there for me. Bellator has offered me a few fights. It just, you know, it's a shame because I was supposed to fight in March and all this happened. So that everything got screwed with making my MMA debut. But I definitely will come back to boxing if I can just get a guy that's top 15. Even I don't care if it's number 15, number 14, number 13, doesn't matter. Just a guy that's ranked, get me back in the rankings, and I can definitely make more noise. And I just need some motivation. That's all. Just need a little bit of motivation to get back in there, and I can definitely make some more noise in boxing.
And coming down to the final few questions, Kermit, I like to ask this. I like to ask, who has been the biggest puncher you've ever faced? You kind of answered it already. It's out of Brunson and gosh, forgot his name for a
Teddy Reed.
There we go. Yeah, Teddy Reed. One of those guys?
Definitely Tyrone Brunson. Definitely.
Okay. And who would you say is the best opponent you've faced? I think you're going to probably say Sergio Martinez.
Sergio Martinez, 100%.
And during like your, I guess, best stages of your career, when you were motivated, when you were on form, when you were a reigning world champion, was there anyone that you wish you'd have had the opportunity to fight, but it never quite happened?
Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto was a fight that should have happened. It's a fight that should have happened. I mean, there was no excuses for any other promoters that had us not to make that fight.
And so far, again, I usually ask this question to guys that have, retired. It's been a few years. They're definitely not going to fight again, but you're still a little bit on the fence at the minute. Have you got any regrets? Any regrets? If you could go back in time and change something, have you got any regrets?
I think that I should have went and I regret not taking the Paul Williams fight. In the beginning, there was talk to fight for the world title. He had the WBO and I had the IBF. But there was two offers for me. One was the Paul Williams fight, and for the two world title fights, we'll fight for the two belts, his belt and my belt, or have fought and rematch with Margarito. Well, of course, me being big-headed in regards to being a very, very competitive athlete, I went with the guy that I lost to. But I think I should have went with the Paul Williams fight. I know I had no doubts that I would have knocked that guy out, and my career would have went maybe a different route. Who knows?
Good question here that I'm going to kind of put you on the spot for a little bit. We like to ask this one to everyone that we speak to from overseas, Kermit. Who comes to mind when I ask, who's your favourite fighter from the UK? People like to hear this one.
Oh, man, from the UK? Man, there's a few fighters, man. Kawasaki was... not Kawasaki. Jesus.
Yeah, Kawasaki.
He's from the UK?
Yeah.
Well, Kawasaki was one of them. Me personally like Ricky Hatton. I just loved his ring entrance. He's a good character. I just loved his personality. There's a lot of good fighters, man, from the UK. A lot of good fighters. But one guy that I don't have the respect to that I wish I would have fought was Amir Khan. I still want to hit. I just want to punch him in the mouth, man. He doesn't shut up.
No, I'm a fan of Amir. I like Amir, but that's a dangerous fight, man. You punch too hard for Amir.
Yeah, it's a good fight. He just doesn't know when to stop, man. Just fight. I'm the type of guy that I don't talk. I just go in there and just accept whatever fight is in front of me and I fight. He's a guy that I just can't stand his interviews, man. That's all. As a fighter, I respect him. He goes in there, he does his thing. But outside the ring, doing interviews, man, I can't, man. I'd love to fight him, definitely. I think I called him out a couple of times, but I've never heard anything.
Okay. And I want to ask you this as well, Kermit. Obviously, like I say, it's been a couple of years. You've been inactive. What's kept you busy during this time? What's got you out of bed?
Man, with this pandemic situation that's happening, I got my kids, man. I got to take care of my kids. Right now, they're all athletic, very, very, athletic kids. My oldest daughter, Savannah, she just graduated from high school. She'll be swimming in college. She's got a nice, good scholarship that she'll be going to, and she's going to be swimming in college. I have my middle child, Denali. She's a great volleyball player, and my son Clemente, which I named him after Roberto Clemente. and he was born to play baseball. That kid he's just unbelievable. Very, very athletic. Just reminds me of me as a kid. Very good pitcher, good hitter, good outfielder. Any position you put him in, he'll play that position. But my kids is what gets me up every morning, man. Just go out there with them and do whatever I need to do to take care of my kids. But with this pandemic situation, man, my wife has me working here at home, just remodeling, renovating my entire house. Work that I've never done before. I'm doing it, first time doing it, and so far the jobs that I've done, they've turned out awesome. So, but yeah, man, my kids is what getting me up, making me up, get up in the mornings and be motivated,
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Good on you, and well done with the DIY stuff around the house. It's not for everyone.
No,
just out of curiosity, where you had bad luck at the Home Depot Center, are you going to Home Depot for the supplies for DIY? Please don't go there.
Bro, that's exactly where I go, Home Depot.
I hope they be giving you
exactly
a discount.
Where I go. Yeah, right, you wish.
And just finally, Kermit, if you've got any closing words just to our listeners before we wrap it up, my friend, obviously guys out here in the UK know exactly who you are, supported you for years and years. What's your message to those supporters from this side of the pond?
Man, I know that overseas, man, there's always bigger fans than people here in the United States are. I've gotten letters all over the world, UK, you name it. Germany, you name it, all over the world, man, overseas. And, I just appreciate every fan, every supportive that have been there and been rooting for me all these years. I know for a fact, I have a few more fights in me. I would love to fight in the UK, or overseas anywhere. One of these days. It's always been one of my goals, one of my dreams. And hopefully it'll happen. I'd love to get back in the ring, but this time at 168 pounds. I know there's good fighters out there at 168 pounds in the UK that I'll be willing to step in the ring with, and I just think we can make it happen. It's just the promoters gotta make the fights happen. I'm down to any fight in the UK or anywhere in the overseas. At 168 pounds, I know there's a lot of fighters out there in the UK that are good. Eubank is one of them. That's a good fighter. I think it's Fielding.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah. Isn't he from the UK as well?
Yeah.
And those are guys that I would love to fight. Overseas on their hometown. It'd be a great experience for me. It's definitely. It can happen. It's just up to the promoters to make things happen for me,
Yeah. Like I said, if you ever come out here to the UK, you'll be received very well by the British public. They appreciate a good fighter. But listen, Kermit, it's been an absolute pleasure discussing your career this week. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope we can speak again real soon.
Absolutely, Joey. Thanks so much, man, for reaching out and getting me back on the air, man. Appreciate that. And again, the fans out there in the UK, man, shout out to you guys. You guys are the best when it comes to fans. That's for sure.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 244 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. The former heavyweight world title challenger, Eddie Chambers, has been with me for the duration of the show. A massive thank you to our sole guest on this week's podcast, the former IBF Welterweight world champion, Kermit Cintron. There has been a break of news. We spoke about it earlier on in the show. In the preview part, we discussed the fight card that's taking place later tonight, Jose Pedraza against Mikel Lespierre. Well, I think it was Lespierre's trainer that's tested positive for COVID-19, so that fight has completely fell through. Instead, the Gabriel Flores and Josek Ruiz fight has been elevated to the main event, so that's big news there. That's a real shame. That was set to be a good fight. Frank Warren today has announced that he is coming back with 3 British title fights. The first one's going to take place on the 10th of July. It's a Friday. It's taking place inside the BT Sports studio. The first fight is going to be Brad Foster defending his British title against James Beach. And the second British title fight, and the third, we're still waiting on dates for that, but it's going to be Anthony Kakachi against Leon Woodstock. That'll be a good fight. And then Lerone Richards against Umar Sadiq. So good fights to look forward to there. It's going to be good to see Frank Warren back on July 10th. Like I say, it's a Friday evening. Yeah, that's about everything really. This has been podcast number 13 during this 13-week lockdown period so far. So 13 weeks of lockdown, 13 podcast episodes, and you've heard 13 different world champions' voices on this podcast since then. Thank you all for listening. Once again, making this podcast what it is. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we welcome you all back again next week.